Welcome to GringoGlot with your host and aspiring polyglot, Richard Messerly. Thank you for being here with me on my first ever episode. Now, the purpose of this episode is to give a little background about who I am, explain what this channel is going to look like, and also to explain what this channel is not. Now, as this is an introduction video, I thought it would be most appropriate to speak in English, but 99% of my videos will be in either Spanish, French, Portuguese, or Italian, and some of them will be in more than one of those languages. So now I want to give you a brief description about my background, my history with each of these languages. So the first language I'd like to talk about is French. Now, French was actually the first foreign language that I studied. I studied it for 3 years in high school, and I did quite well in it, but as most of you know, studying a language in high school doesn't really teach you how to speak the language. But I did then also minor in French at a 4-year university, and I also did quite well academically. But that's just it. All of my experience with French is academic. I have learned by textbooks, I have learned in classrooms, but I've really not seen the language out in the wild. But I have had brief stints with French out in the real world. I lived in French housing for a couple months with a native Haitian as a roommate. I visited France for a couple days. I went to Quebec for a day. And one of my best friends is actually a native Quebecois, although we usually 99% of the time speak in English. But having said all this, I do know French grammar quite well. I can read very well in French, but it's the verbal that I really wish I was better at. In fact, right before graduating from my university, I took one of those language placement tests where you speak with a native on the phone for about a half hour and they evaluate your speaking primarily. And I was somewhat disappointed with my score. Even though I had studied French for over a decade, I still only ranked at a B2 level in French. And by contrast, Spanish, a language which I haven't spoken as long, I ranked at a C1 level, which for some of you that might not be familiar with the CEFR levels, a C1 is higher than a B2. A B2 is essentially the higher intermediate level, and a C1 is a lower advanced level. Now, I think I've given you enough background with French, so let's go over to Spanish. With my experience with Spanish, I started to learn Spanish when I was 19 years old. I served a religious mission in Guatemala, so I was among native Spanish speakers for 2 years, where I was speaking every day. So although I wasn't reading textbooks or doing all the academic exercises, activities that you might do in a scholastic setting, I definitely was immersed in the Spanish language. So when I came back from Guatemala, I went back to school, and I was again at a 4-year university where I minored in Spanish as well. And so I also then got to have that academic experience with Spanish where I was doing a lot of grammar study and reading old literature and writing papers and things of that nature that develop different skills within your language repertoire. I wouldn't say that I became any more fluent by studying Spanish at the university, but I definitely kept it from getting rusty, and I still found many opportunities to use Spanish as I worked with Spanish speakers and had other opportunities to use Spanish in my daily life. And so I think this brings us to Portuguese, which is my newest language, and specifically I'm referring to Brazilian Portuguese. I've been interested in Portuguese for about 3 to 4 years. Towards the end of my time at my university, I audited a Portuguese class for Spanish speakers, and I found that really interesting. I really enjoyed it, but I was only able to attend the class for about a month before I graduated. And if nothing else, that month in that class really piqued my interest in the Portuguese language. I didn't really need a whole lot of grammar background since I had the Spanish background. And the textbook that they had really pointed out the differences between Portuguese and Spanish. And so I used that textbook to study for about 2 years off and on, but it wasn't really a language I was focusing on. It was more just an interest. So it wasn't until the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic where I found myself at home with a lot more time on my hands, where I decided that I really wanted to dive into the Portuguese language. So for the last 9 months, I have been obsessed with the Brazilian Portuguese language. I started by listening to some really good podcasts that I'm going to discuss in other videos, but I actually haven't spoken with anyone in Portuguese until about 7 months into the pandemic. So just a couple months ago was when I first had a conversation in Portuguese, and I just loved it. I love speaking with native Brazilians, and I've documented that. So on this channel, I'm going to have a playlist about my experience learning Brazilian Portuguese during the pandemic. So although my background with French is 100% academic, and my background with Spanish started off by immersion into a native environment and then supplemented by academic, My background with Portuguese is a little bit of a mix, but really it's just been extensive amounts of oral listening followed by extensive amounts of oral speaking. And so I haven't really read a whole lot of books, and we'll talk about some of my tactics with Portuguese learning in other videos, but it really is quite a bit of a difference between how I learned French and Spanish. And so finally that brings us to Italian, which I don't have a lot to say because I don't know Italian yet. That is one of my goals from this podcast, is to also document the learning of Italian. I would say my extent with Italian is basically just opening the Duolingo app and playing around with it one time. So I still have very little understanding of Italian, and we'll kind of learn that on the way. Well, that's enough about me. Now let's talk about the channel. So the whole premise of this channel is that if you already know one Romance language, it is always, I mean always, easier to learn a second Romance language. Now, there might be some pitfalls that you need to learn along the way because of similarities or strong differences between the languages, but it always provides a stronger foundation. I found that to be true for Portuguese especially. So the whole reason why this channel exists is because in the United States, more than 50% of students in high school study either Spanish or French, and there's good reason for that. They're very popular and common languages, and they are very useful in the world and very beautiful as well. But it's a shame that not as many students study Portuguese and Italian. Fortunately though, if you studied French or Spanish, and primarily if you took one of those languages to a very high level, it will transition quite well. It will provide a foundation for learning the other Romance languages. And so we're going to kind of go on this journey together of comparing the languages, seeing how you can springboard from one to the next, learning the differences, and just improving our languages. And we will address the very real challenge of mastering multiple languages at the same time. But beyond just maintaining 4 languages, we will look at how to improve them simultaneously. Now, I think this is an appropriate time to tell you what this channel is not. This channel is not going to be your primary source of learning. We're not going to have comprehensive lessons that teach you from A to Z everything you need to know about a language. It's more going to be showing you some pitfalls, some hacks, some shortcuts, some tricks, and just things that I've learned along the way in my many years of studying these languages. I'm also going to direct you to other sources that I've found very useful. I'll provide reviews of those sources for the best material out there. A real challenge with trying to master 4 languages simultaneously is a lack of time. And so we're going to talk about how we can be ultra effective and efficient by removing English completely from the equation. We'll be studying Portuguese from a Spanish perspective so that we can build our Portuguese knowledge while refining and reviewing our Spanish material at the same time. Because let's be honest, there are lots of people out there that speak these languages and can teach these languages better than I can. And so my role is primarily to teach you some of the tricks, the shortcuts, and to help you be more efficient with your time, to direct you to the most useful resources, because there are too many resources out there, to be honest. There are a lot of really good resources, but there are also some resources that can waste your time. And as we've mentioned, time is the ultimate enemy when it comes to learning multiple languages. We simply don't have enough of it. So as we enter a new year in 2021, I invite you to set clear goals into your language learning, no matter where you are. And I hope that this channel can help you along the way. So to be perfectly candid with you about my goals, my goal is to have Spanish, French, and Portuguese all at the same level by the end of 2021. And I have clear short-term goals along the way that I'll talk about in other videos. But that just gives you a sense as to what we're looking at for this year. We'll be focusing on all 3 of those languages. We won't have any content on Italian just yet, but I really hope that you join me on this journey to fluency in these Romance languages. Learning a new language can open up so many doors to different opportunities and to different cultures that can really widen your horizons. This last year, 2020, has been extremely difficult for many people around the world, some a lot more than others. And I feel extremely blessed that I was able to do something that I loved and to learn a new language during this past year. And that's one thing that I do want to carry from 2020 into 2021 is my passion for learning these languages. So thank you for sticking with me through the first video of GringoGlot. I will be releasing a new video every week, but I hope to see you the next time. See you there.